Brands are expected to behave like people, and that's very complicated and complex in the new media landscape. We often talk about brand positioning, but is brand positioning liquid? Is it even possible? Once we get sign-off on that brief, is it even still relevant? So in our survey, we found 1 in 2 say when expressing myself on different social media networks, I express myself differently depending on which social network I'm using. And if you just think about that for a second, we take ourselves back to a place where everybody was on MySpace and then Facebook came out, and all of a sudden MySpace kind of caved in on itself, and every brand who overinvested in a marketing strategy on MySpace felt like going forward, we just have to be everywhere. If we're not somewhere, we're not relevant. If we don't have a Tumblr page, a Pinterest page, a Vine page, someone's going to lose us. We're not going to get that maximum reach we really need. So we talk about brand positioning when we meet with clients. We talk about Revolt. How do we execute a strategy, a creative strategy that we've all agreed upon? I feel like brand behavior is the new brand positioning. And when you talk about, this is a generation that has never cared so much before about how brands behave of any demographic at the same age. So in our survey, we found 3 in 4 say it's cooler for a brand to stand out than to fit in. And I think what I would challenge everybody to think about is in the world of emerging big data, and being able to spot what's trending, is commoditizing what's trending actually what the consumer really wants? Or as a brand, by the time you've tapped into what's trending, are you behind the times? And so it's a bit complex, because like never before have we more understood what people are doing, what they're watching, what they like. But that actually creates more of a challenge for us in the content and marketing business, is like, how do you give the people something they don't already have? How do you go left and everybody else goes right? The aftermath of that "can you dunk in the dark" tweet was every brand tries to do that now. Every brand is sitting there with their young, smart social media whiz during live events trying to own the conversation through some witty tweet. And when we talked to folks, during Road to Truth, one of the things they brought up unprobed was that when JCPenney drunk tweeted during the Super Bowl last year, that was actually more noticeable than anybody else trying to just be funny and own the conversation through doing exactly what Oreos did a few years prior. So when we talk about, media consumption and what's really going on here, I think if we all take ourselves back to our teen and early 20-something years, these are very strange times. These are times of thin confidence, standing out, fitting in. So one of the things we've been working on lately, we're doing a study this year called Code of Content, is we want to understand, obviously, content marketing, but our approach to do that is, let's look at developmentally what's going on with this age group, so don't talk about generations for a sec, and then just look at how those developmental themes are manifesting through media behaviors. So media helps with the work of growing up. And I think there's 3 themes that stand out and give a little bit of light as to what the actual motivations and drivers are behind what people do. I was listening to a panel yesterday and some college kid was talking about how he just bought a selfie stick. Does anybody here have a selfie stick before I make fun of that? Okay, 2, like 2% of the audience. So basically, it's like you hold this stick up, take pictures, and I think as marketers we look at that like, people love selfies, let's go make selfies. But I think, by the time you make a selfie, like Arby's has a selfie campaign, it's kind of silly, But you look at what's really going on there, what are people doing, especially with this age range. So identity creation, so it's always true, right? You're young, you're in your teen years, you're figuring out, who am I? It's based on other people you know, places you've traveled to, books you've read, movies you've seen. But in this day and age, it's based on an unlimited amount of access to content and things. And we see this taking shape through music culture very much, like nobody's defined by one genre anymore. And when we ask the audience what makes their generation different, they say we're more connected by music, because the rise of the multi-genre palette is making people kind of tear down the walls between clicks and borders and boundaries. But it's also doing that in places that aren't just music, fashion. I mean, think about the word hipster, which is really just a marketer's inability to kind of box people who are unboxable. So identity creation looks different, feels different, takes place through social media in new exciting ways. Rehearsing adulthood. So think about when your older sibling took you to a party. I'd call that rehearsing adulthood. You got to try out themes that were relevant to your next chapter in the developmental cycle. Now those things are taking place through social media. People can peek their head into spaces and chapters and areas and kind of take time to post, take time to respond, take time to kind of curate who they are in a more strategic, interesting way than ever before. And belonging. We talk about Tyler Oakley at Revolt. Does anybody here know Tyler Oakley? And what that's done for young people across America who are coming out earlier than ever before. And you think about, we all look at YouTube and we're like, oh, people don't watch TV, they watch YouTube. And it's like, it's kind of a one-dimensional perception. I think YouTube is able to kind of serve the masses by slowly building an audience through things that, if you put them on TV, might not have mass appeal right away. So we talk about belonging, a need for belonging being met. I mean, when we interview the audience, a lot of folks have friends they've never even met in person. Maybe they met them in an Xbox game, maybe they follow each other on YouTube, or they just support each other on Instagram. But this is a new thing that kind of contributes to, again, this sense of belonging, which is a timeless theme of being young, met through contemporary content behaviors. So a new generation, a new culture. And I think I just love this quote, which was from Professor of Psychology at Vassar. She was talking about, remember picture day when we were younger? And so you'd think about what outfit you were going to wear and who you were baked into in that day, kind of put your stake in the ground. This is me. I'm the guy, my mohawk was perfect, or I wore that nice new shirt. Now every day is picture day. And if you just think about that for a second, again, it's a timeless theme with a contemporary expression that is very much millennial, post-millennial in nature, that gives us a little bit of insight into what's going on with content consumption in the age group. So the new media, new normal. One of the other things we found in Road to Truth was 70% of 14 to 34-year-olds have 3 or more social media platforms they check regularly or constantly. So gone are the days where everybody's gravitating towards one platform and it kind of owns the conversation. And here comes an era when everybody's enjoying a variety of platforms for a variety of different reasons. Remember, 1 and 2 said across new media, they're expressing themselves in different ways. So the question for us as brands and marketers and content publishers is, are we? I mean, I think I would argue a lot of the folks in the room have probably seen this too. We sit in meetings and we're talking about what's our strategy, what's our content, and it always begins with making the content and then spraying it across new media once the research guy comes in and says, here's where teens are spending time. And the irony of that is if you just spray your content all over the internet, you're not really fitting in, as Bonin said, in a native way to the platforms that matter. You're not engaging in a meaningful way. So the challenge today is, yes, it's reinventing how we reach and what we reach, but it's also reinventing the definition of reach. So are we really interested anymore in quantity of engagement, or is it about quality of engagement? And if you step back and talk about how you'd sit with a blank sheet of paper and create a marketing strategy from that, it looks very different. So social media is an amplification of traditional media. Again, going back to what Bonin said, so when you coupled Twitter with the TV show on Fuse, you saw the reach increase exponentially. So 62% say, I use technology to enhance my experience. And I think that's also true when an advertising agency or a media brand like us sits down and says, how do we use social media to amplify what we're doing on the big screen or with traditional media? And just work with me on this hypothesis for a second. I mean, I think there's some folks in the room who would say, nope, we'd be confident increasing our digital spend significantly more than our linear spend. And that may show to be true, but I think at this point in time when we talk about how do the two complement each other, we do very much see best practices reflect social media amplifies traditional. So what that means is when we talk about reach and frequency and engagement, I mean, one of the challenges for me in my role is, what is Revolt's business proposition? Our audience, 25 million homes. Thank you for saying that, by the way. You could have lied. 100 million homes. We're in 100 million homes. We're in 25 million homes. And the cool thing is that puts a pressure on us, first and foremost, to create a value proposition that makes TV look very differently. At other networks I've worked with, we're constantly trying to figure out how do you understand the audience to drive authentic content that drives ratings. And the irony of that is if you're an entertainment brand, you're playing in territory of aspiration. So how do you appeal to 100% of people in real time when you're really trying to appeal to the leading edge or the early adopters? It's very complex. So what we've been saying is you look at our network. We're small. We meet with tons of folks who look at us in many different ways. Some folks say, are you Nielsen rated? How many homes are you in? And then one guy said to us, actually I have to give credit from this gentleman from MediaVest, Dana. He said to us very early on, he said, look, it's a plus to me that you guys happen to have distribution. I look at you as a content creation agency. And Honda since has been our biggest client. And I think when he said that, I was like, what does that even mean? And then what I realized he was talking about is if you look at a small network and you basically look at how agencies and advertising uses television, it's always about airing a spot, airing an integration. Oh, they have a lot of social reach, so we'll get that too. But it's quite interesting if you said, what if you just make our content, yeah, put it on your channel, put it on your platforms, and then give me the flash drive. Because let's be honest, if Wiz Khalifa comes on Revolt, he has bigger distribution than Revolt. And that can be a problem, that can be a dilemma, or that can be an opportunity. And I think for us, we've seen it very much thinking about when you talk about the fact that just young people don't watch TV the way other people have in the past. And that's not going to change. I think every older demographic, every younger demographic very much reflects a new way of consuming TV content.